Welcome everyone. Today, I'll take the liberty to assume that most of the folks on the session are already subscribers of Netflix. I know it's a Wednesday morning, but picture this. It's late in the Friday evening and you grab a bag of popcorn, you sit down on your comfy couch, and you're ready to binge watch a show that you've been waiting for several days. Most likely, you're going to get past and be able to watch through the entire set of episodes without any issues. But there is still a minuscule chance that you might run into this, not such a great experience, or even this. Yeah, pretty disheartening. Now let's consider another scenario where you still don't have a subscription, but somehow your coworker convinces you that, hey, Netflix is the most awesome thing and you need to hop onto the train. You change your mind, you're ready to do the sign up. Again, most likely you'll sail through the sign up experience without any issues, but there's still that 0.0001% chance that you might run into this when you're ready to submit your payment. I indeed didn't paint a very rosy picture for you, but yeah, that's what I'm here for. Hey, I'm Ruchi. I'm from the website Tooling and Productivity team at Netflix. And today I'll be talking through how our team at Netflix is working aggressively to change your experience from anything anger or frustration or boredom to just everything joy and contentment. I apologize in advance for the extensive use of imagery, but hey, it's a Netflix presentation and I couldn't resist myself from sneaking in some of the clips of these awesome binge-worthy shows. I'm definitely thankful to Sauce Labs for giving me the opportunity to be able to showcase all the brilliant work that our teams at Netflix are doing to give that joy and satisfaction to the customers. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering today. So the first thing is let's go through the life cycle of code at Netflix. I have divided this into basically 4 stages where the first stage is the local development, as most of you are familiar, where developers write the product code, and along with that, they work on authoring different category of tests, like API, mock UI, and some of the functional tests with collaboration with our QAs and SDETs. I will be talking a little more about these different category of tests in the upcoming slides. Once the code looks good, they've done enough testing in their local environment and they're ready to merge. The next stage is the build and deploy stage. This is the stage where we trigger a pipeline called a pre-merge pipeline. And as the name suggests, it does everything to validate the code before it gets merged into the mainline branch. So this pipeline takes care of compiling the code, running all sorts of static analysis, running unit test cases. Once all that looks good, the code gets deployed on our pre-merge clusters in AWS. And then we run a set of tests called the pre-merge tests. And these tests are basically for validating the core functionality across the website, so different feature areas, and making sure that things are looking good on the developer code before it gets merged in. And all of these results for the pre-merge test, they get reported to the pull request. And at that point, the developer can triage the results and fix in the failures and then move on to merging their code. Next step is basically everything testing, automated testing. So once we have check-ins or commits from several developers at a regular cadence, we basically do a build from our mainline branch. And this build gets deployed to our int and integration and staging clusters. And this is the stage where we run all sorts of test cases, so functional, cross-browser, mobile browser, API, mock UI, and all of those results get reported for consumption by our teams. So the QAs, SDETs, and developers look at the results and again, validate how things are looking before they give a go or no go for pushing the code to production. And last but not the least is just the deploying to prod. Sometimes we may decide to do a canary where a particular build gets served to only a small percentage of traffic to get some metrics to monitor the results. And once everything looks good in canary, we trickle that build down to 100% of the traffic. And this is the stage which involves canary analysis, and we have tooling around that to make sure canary is looking good before we deploy the code to all the different regions in prod. And after that, then obviously monitoring and alerting to keep an eye on how things are going in production. So what you see here was not an easy road. I think it took a lot of investment in the automation landscape to be able to get to where we are today. Let's take a look at how automation looked like at Netflix.com a couple years ago. The closest analogy I have is of, as you can see, Stranger Things, where we had two parallel worlds of development and testing which were coexisting. There were a lot of boundaries around these two worlds. The code existed in different repos altogether. So the test code lived in a separate repo and the product code lived in a separate repo. They were written in different frameworks, and all of those caused a lot of challenges. And as Alyssa talked about in her presentation, we were pretty much in the same model where SDETs and QAs were the primary responsible owners for everything automation. We didn't really have much concept of the test pyramid. Everything like 1,000, 2,000 plus tests that we had were all end-to-end test cases. And we were only doing all our automated testing on Chrome. Everything else was just like manual right before the release, and the QAs would do some sort of validations before giving a go to our build. As you could imagine, that model definitely posed a lot of challenges for us. There was this boundary between dev and QA, and as a result, there was very limited involvement from developers. Just the cost of context switching between different repos from different frameworks. Developers use JavaScript, and the framework we used was in Java. So there was a lot of context switching, which just made it really hard for developers to be involved in test automation and be able to contribute. One of the side effects of end-to-end testing was we were finding it extremely hard to be able to pinpoint the bugs, like whether the bugs were coming from the UI code that our developers had written, or these were coming from the backend teams whose data we consume. And so every bug would take a long time to triage, and it was definitely time consuming. And just the manual coverage across different platforms and browsers was pretty taxing on our test team. Having to do that process manually every time would just slow down releases. And if people are not available around, they are on leave, then just finding the people to be able to do all this was extremely taxing. So I think, with all that, there was a point in time where we realized there needs to be a shift in the way things are happening. And where we stand today is definitely a much better place. Based on the investments we made, we started merging those two worlds together, and we brought the product code and the test code into the same repositories. We made them both in the same language, and that just clearly opened the doors doors for contribution from all our developers. And currently we are in a world where There is a very tight collaboration between the developers and QAs, and they're working together to get to the test pyramid, ideal test pyramid. We're definitely not there yet, but we are trending in the right direction. The teams work together to identify the different category of tests for every feature that they're working on, and they work together to author these test cases. And with this radical shift, we've started seeing pretty high pass rates for automation consistently. This is for a regression test, which is close to 3,000 plus tests that we're running. So that's a great win for us. And we obviously now have a much better coverage across mobile browsers and other browsers other than Chrome. And all of that is done through automation now. Now, let's take a look at the different automation suites that we use that give us the confidence in shipping our code to production. The first suite, and I'll let you know that basically the size of the oval that you see here is sort of very reflective of the volume of test cases in that suite. So we have a pre-merge suite, which gets run as a part of the pre-merge pipeline on every commit. It's close to 150, 200 test cases across all functional areas that we run, and which gives the developer the confidence in their code before they merge it to the mainline. The next two category of test cases, which we are actively working on getting more and more test cases into these two categories, are the API functional and mock UI tests. So API functional is essentially tests which validate the data that we get from our backend teams, and mock UI is validating that given a set of data, does the UI component render correctly? So if you can see how we broke down an end-to-end test into these particular two categories, and it just makes it so much easier to pinpoint when there is a bug that happens. If a mock UI test fails, it's pretty clear it's something in the UI. It has nothing to do with the data, and vice versa. So it's made this life easier for the people who are actually authoring and debugging these test cases. The next is a smoke suite, which is a handful of test cases, which is extremely core functionality for Netflix. Things like sign up, is that working or not? Playback, is that working or not? So if anything in the smoke fails, quite likely any other automation is going to fail massively. So when smoke failures happen, then the first priority is to address those because something is definitely wrong, and these tests are expected to be extremely robust. Regression is everything else that we run, any functionality, any feature that we roll out, everything on Netflix.com that needs to be tested is a part of our bigger regression suite. And as I called out, it's close to like 3,000 plus test cases that we run as a part of regression. And the next two categories is cross-browser, mobile browser. We recently added these category of test cases, which provide us coverage across different platforms and browsers. And we're primarily running smoke test cases as part of these, but there might be features which are very specific to mobile browser. And those are the kind of test cases that will get added to the suite. And last but not the least is definitely the biggest suite of our test cases, which is the screenshot test and the visual regression test. I have a slide dedicated to talk just about these because I think Netflix is in a unique spot, and there's a lot that needs to happen when it comes to visual regression testing. So this is an overall picture of how our automation suites look like, and we run through all of these as a part of our release cycles to gain confidence in our code before shipping it. Let's take a deep dive into just our automation infrastructure internally. So we use Chrome as our primary browser for running test cases. It is the fastest browser, and it provides a benchmark for running rest of the functional test cases. for us. The setup that we have is we use Selenium Grid Scaler open source software, which helps us scale up or down massively based on demand of how many tests need to be run at any particular time. We run close to 40,000 plus test cases on Chrome during any given day. And we also leverage a Selenium plugin to capture the videos, which is, and these videos are available to on our reporting system where people can take a look when they are triaging their failures. For cross-browser, I'd say a couple years ago, we started to do an in-house setup where we had a grid for different browsers to be able to test, but the maintenance cost was extremely high, and we were constantly seeing these machines not in good state. And at that point, it was pretty clear that we're probably not the expert on this, and it is a good time to start investing into a vendor which has their full expertise on cross-browser solutions. And that's when we started integration with Sauce Labs. So currently we leverage Sauce Labs for all our cross-browser testing, and we have been incrementally adding browsers to the mix based on the browser metrics that we see in the field in terms of usage. And then we have integrated the results from Sauce Labs into our internal dashboards because we want to keep it pretty seamless for the users. They do not need to worry about if the test is running in-house using the Chrome grid or the test are running externally on Sauce Labs. So to make that experience pretty seamless, we've integrated the results internally on our dashboards. For mobile browser, we're leveraging an in-house mobile automation lab within Netflix because Netflix has heavily invested into mobile automation infrastructure. The lab provides us access to all sorts of simulators, emulators, and real devices. And they offer a lot of features around test management, tagging things as known issues, and reporting, getting alerted when the test failures happen. So currently we are in the state where we have an in-house solution for everything mobile browser testing, and for cross-browser, we're leveraging Sauce Labs. So as I promised, we do have a dedicated slide for visual regression testing. So given the global nature of Netflix, I think this area is significantly important. We have to maintain a lot of language translations, and we have to do testing on 30 plus languages. And so here is just a glimpse of how the non-member homepage or the homepage would look like in just 5 different languages. And imagine having to maintain these translations, validating them with every build, and it comes with a huge cost. And so we had to automate the system around this. So this is when we made the investments into screenshot testing and visual regression testing. So the first category is screenshot tests, which is basically tests that produce screenshots in different languages. And these screenshots are leveraged by our localization team, who does the manual validation of strings in different languages. And all of these tests are data-driven tests. So it's the same test and it gets data-driven across multiple locales. And it captures the screenshots, and these screenshots get posted to an internal tool called Hydra. And Hydra is a great tool where it does bucketization of screenshots into different page categories by different locales. So there's a lot of filtering that you can do within that tool. And this localization experts can start drilling down into the screenshots and look into if there are any issues that need to be brought up. We run close to 14,000 plus test cases every day, which are screenshot tests, and these are across 30 plus languages. So that's basically a bulk of our automation that gets run, the screenshot test cases. Coming to the next category, it's the visual regression test, and as the name suggests, the intent is slightly different. This is basically to identify if there are any regressions in the UI from build to build. And it validates bugs that might be caused due to CSS changes. And there are baselines that are maintained for each screen. And then with the build, when the visual regression tests are run, then it pinpoints if there are regression on any particular screen, and people can go and take a look at and identify if there's potentially bugs hidden there. We currently use Apply tools for automation visual regression testing, for automated visual regression testing, and this is done across web and mobile browsers. The next thing I want to cover was automation APIs. Netflix.com, we leverage a lot of automation APIs to be able to test these unique scenarios, all the customer scenarios, their states, and all that. So the first category is more around APIs related to just the setup for any test case. A customer could be in any given state, and there are really complex state involved around customer creation. The customer could be a new member. The customer could be a customer on hold. It could be a customer who is rejoining, who was previously a member. So we have to be able to create customers in all these different states to be able to validate their functional flow. So we have APIs to be able to create customer in different states. Also, given the number of payments, method of payments that Netflix support, we have APIs to create different kind of gift codes for different countries. We have ability to create direct debit bank card. We have like all of those APIs. Think of anything that a customer can do in real world. We have APIs to translate that into the test code. So this makes our automation really powerful and be able to test all the flows. Other set of APIs is just to help with tests being more atomic, like things like you want to add multiple profiles to your account. You want to be able to add several titles to my list. And so instead of driving the UI to create, add profiles, to add to my list, there are just APIs available so that you can have an account in that state and then just be able to target the functionality that your test needs to test. So several such APIs, these are just a handful that I've listed here. Auto login, so you don't have to go through the login screen for every test, and things like that. So all of these automation APIs, and we keep adding to the list as new features come in, and they just give us a lot more flexibility, and they make our automation much more powerful. So changing gears a little bit, I think with the Sauce Labs integration, I wanted to talk about how we started with a proof of concept a year ago with Sauce Labs, when we started to feel the need to have a robust solution for testing different browsers. And after the proof of concept, things fell into place, and we thought that this was the right direction to move in. And we started with the contract with Sauce Labs, and now we use it for our automated and live testing needs. Again, we've done seamless integration with our internal dashboards. The strategy that we have followed is we identify a few key browsers based on the usage metrics in production for Netflix.com, which browser and what version of the browser has the highest usage. So we'll target that browser and prioritize that to onboard onto the Sauce Labs platform. We'll onboard all our smoke test cases onto that browser, and then we'll move on to the next browser, and so on and so forth. We are definitely thinking to reevaluate the browser usage metrics every at a regular cadence, so we can go back and review and make sure we have the right mix that we are testing based on the actual metrics from production. So while the partnership has definitely got us a lot more benefits, it did come with its own set of challenges. And this is just challenges across to deal with just the cross browser automation itself. I think one unique challenge was just the cross browser compatibility of commands. You would expect, in an ideal world, you would expect you write a test once and that test works seamlessly across Chrome and Firefox and Safari and Edge and everything possible. But for those of you who've written or done cross browser testing, would know that's not the reality of things. So the framework that we use, we ended up creating a lot more custom commands than we wanted to for just cross-browser compatibility. So things like getting the cookies, setting the cookies, that would not work the same way across all the browsers. So we would end up creating a lot of custom commands to make things to work on different browsers. In doing so, one of the biggest challenges was just finding a knowledge base, like everything aggregated at one place for everything for browser issues. And unfortunately, it didn't seem like anything like that exists yet. So most of the things were trial and error. Like you would end up going on forums and then figuring out, hey, other folks have also seen this issue, and these are the things that they have tried. You would keep doing a lot of trial and error for different browsers, which is definitely a lot of time consuming activities. And given every different framework that you have, the compatibility of the commands could also be different. So all of that definitely made just onboarding our test cases a lot more challenging. The next thing was just the source tunnel integration. I think this was a requirement for us to be able to access our internal environments through a secure tunnel from the Sauce Labs VM. And given that this is a security factor, a lot of teams had to be pulled in from our side as well. Our cloud networking team, a security team, to make sure we're implementing this the right way and understanding how the tunnel operates. So that took us a while, but I think it's a one-time activity. So once you have it set up, then beyond that, it's just easier to do integration. For every new browser that we need to onboard, sometimes we would end up having to write pre-run scripts for Sauce Labs. Like your browser needs to be in a certain state when it launches. And to be able to do that, you have to set up these scripts, and these are unique to every browser. So just identifying what that setup should look like and authoring those scripts. And it's not like one script works across the board. So all of that is very unique to every browser and time consuming. Again, one time thing, but the next time you want to onboard the next browser, you might have to do the same thing again. Playback definitely has its own share of challenges. It's a very key feature to Netflix, obviously, and getting it to work across browser, being able to test it has been a little bit of challenge. I think every browser behaves differently, and there were things like for autoplay to start, where you finish an episode and the next episode starts on its own. So just the out of the box features, if you need to enable those on different browsers, you have to do different things. So for Firefox, we had to create a separate profile, which was pre-configured with the settings. For other browsers, we had to do something differently. Safari is its own beast, where the DRM playback on Safari does not work on a virtual machine. It requires a physical device. So this is something that we cannot test with Sauce Labs. and we have done our in-house setup for testing, for running playback test cases on Safari on real physical devices. So apart from a lot of like the technical challenges, I think there were a few other things that we had to take into account when we started the contract with Sauce Labs. The first was just doing the capacity calculations in terms of identifying what's that optimal capacity we need to run our test cases. We want to avoid either underinvesting or overinvesting, and then finding out what that right amount is. And those Sauce Labs offers all the great tools to be able to onboard and identify your requirements. I think every company, every team has its unique set of requirements. So for us, we had to estimate how many test cases we would be planning to onboard, how many browsers would be added to the mix, and what is our tolerance for the feedback time, how long the test can be queued up before we actually get results from the test, and all of that calculation. So we obviously ended up putting our math squad hats for those and did a lot of internal calculations to be able to identify what is that number that we should begin with when we start moving into the contract. And I think the last thing which is still ongoing is just optimizing our runs to be able to leverage the full capacity. We have definitely pockets of time where we are not actively using any of the VMs. And obviously, those are the times when no check-ins are going in. So just constantly identifying how we can structure our runs to be able to leverage the capacity. That is an ongoing effort. But yeah, despite of all these challenges, I think, I mean, we've started to see great value out of Sauce Labs. Our developers, QA now have access to all these different browsers. That was, I mean, initially very hard to even find a machine with those, with IE9 to be able to repro bugs in production. So all of that, we're starting to see value, and we're very excited about this partnership. And the challenges would keep coming. And one thing, of course, I can say is this has been a challenging but a rewarding journey. And I think if we continue down this path, we're definitely going to land into the good place, the better place, for lack of words. With that, I'm open to Q&A. Thank you.
Great, Ruchi. Awesome presentation. Thanks so much for taking us through that. I know we're a little over time, but I did want to get one question in. There was one question in the chat around the Selenium grid scaler that you're using. We want to know what the name of that scaler is and any other information you want to give us on that.
Yeah, I can actually put that in the comment, the link to that. It's an open source Selenium grid scaler plugin that we use. So I can put a link to that in the chat in case anybody wants to use that. So
Ruchi, thank you again. I think it was really great to learn more about how Netflix is breaking down or increasing the communication between developers and QA. I know that's no easy task. So sounds like you guys have done a lot of really good work over there. So congrats.
Thank you.